The wild AFC West lived up to its name in the offseason with crazy additions like Devontae Adams and Russell Wilson, but also some big departures like Tyreek Hill. The Chargers had a couple of splash additions of their own, but did they do enough to take the crown in the AFC West?
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Droegemeier, and we've been covering the Chargers together for over 6 seasons, but we're heading into our 5th season as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you guys so much for making us your first listen today, and on today's show, we have a big one because we're talking about how the Chargers stack up against the AFC West. The schedule has now come out. We know where the Chargers play them during the season. But even with all of the additions and departures, did the Chargers do enough to close the gap in the AFC West? And obviously it starts and runs through Arrowhead. So I think that's where we have to get into in those big losses. Can the other guys that they added, like a Juju Smith-Schuster, like a MVS, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, did those make up for the fact that the Chiefs lost Tyreek Hill? You know, did the Broncos do enough with Russell Wilson to really put themselves in a position to win the West? Or are the Chargers still better with additions like J.C. Jackson and Khalil Mack? That's what we have to get into today, David, because, oh yeah, the Raiders also added Devontae Adams and Chandler Jones. Like, this division is so nuts. And now we're going to talk about how the games played out last year between the Chargers and these two teams, and if the Chargers did more than these two teams did to really put themselves in the driver's seat to win their first division crown since 2009. But today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, David, well, we haven't really talked much about what the rest of the AFC West has done during this offseason after the draft, right? Because that's where these teams put the finishing touches kind of on their off seasons and really, framed how this division is going to play out with the rosters that we're going to see going at it in a crazy division. And in the AFC West, David, that's what the Chargers have to really focus on this season, right? Last year, they split the series. Like, I think this year they need to go at least 4-2 in their division, right? You have, if you're a really good team, play like a really good team, beat other really good teams. Yeah. And I think even getting to the record we had, like a 12-5 record or something like that, you still have to beat a lot of the non-conference teams, right? Or non-division teams. But in this division, it seems like that's where a lot of the toughest games are going to come from, David. And you have to start with the Chiefs. And last year, the Chargers split the series. One went to overtime. The other one was Justin Herbert late in the game, getting the go-ahead touchdown to Mike Williams. He really had 2 go-ahead touchdowns. In the second game, he had one with 2 minutes and 9 seconds left, and they gave up a touchdown. Less than a minute later, Justin Herbert doesn't touch the ball in overtime. Ugh. Now the Chiefs and the Chargers square off week 2, Thursday night football, early on in the season. You're going to get a good, glimpse of what these two teams are going to look like. And then week 11, November 20th, we'll see. So pretty early on later in the season. But David, this has been crazy ever since Justin Herbert stepped foot. I mean, even before like Phillip Rivers' 2018 game, right? The Mike Williams in the back of the end zone, the 2-point conversion. Yeah. But like with Justin Herbert, like that's been a duel. Justin Herbert has taken one, right? And has really kept it crazy close in every single game. And I'm really, really looking forward to these games as always.
I mean, like we said before, every single one of these games is appointment television, but especially, I think ever since Justin Herbert entered the game in his first game against the Chiefs with absolutely no notice and then just completely lit it up, we can't see these games any other way. They're just going to be crazy intense. The talent on both sides is obviously very apparent. And after this offseason, Daniel, it's gotten even better.
Yeah, and I mean, Justin Herbert has 2 overtime losses to Patrick Mahomes, right, and 1 win because he didn't play in the second game of 2020, his rookie season, because the Chiefs had already clinched what they needed to in the AFC. Every game has been nuts. I mean, and Brandon Staley, that was kind of when we first saw, like, oh, hey, he's just going to go for it, like crazy. Yeah. He's not going to leave it up to Tristan Vizcaino, thank God, and even because he ended up missing the PAT in that game too, and Patrick Mahomes got the ball back, but I think they're the one team in the division where you wonder if they got better, David, because I think with most teams in the AFC West, you're talking about the additions. You're talking about J.C. Jackson. You're talking about Chandler Jones and Devontae Adams and Russell Wilson. The biggest story for the Chiefs easily is losing Tyreek Hill and trading Tyreek Hill to the Miami Dolphins. They got a lot of draft picks back, and we'll talk about some good additions, guys we liked that I ended up with in the draft, of course. But David, it starts there. It starts with the departures. It starts with Tyreek Hill. It starts, Tyrann Mathieu was a big part of that defense, a heart and soul of that defense kind of player.
Yeah.
Charvarius Ward, another good player for them.
Yep.
John Reed, Daniel Sorensen, I'm glad to see is gone as well. But it starts with
Yes.
Tyreek Hill for sure, and how they replace that.
Yeah, I mean, you can't. I mean, there's
Yeah,
only one Tyreek Hill in the NFL. I mean, that guy is absolutely nasty because of what he can do with the ball in his hands, no matter where they are on the football field, and with his ability to continue to create and continue to be available for his quarterback. I mean, how many times did we see Tyreek Hill bail his quarterback
sure.
out? I mean, a million different times, or just have these crazy backyard plays that you just never expect to work out, and he takes it the distance for a game-winning touchdown. He did that time and time and time again. That's why the Miami Dolphins traded what they did for him and gave him a massive contract, because that dude is one of the most dangerous weapons in the NFL, bar none. So to get him out of the AFC West and away from Patrick Mahomes is an absolutely beautiful thing, Daniel. That dude can absolutely wreck a game, and he did so against the Chargers on many different occasions.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just hard with a guy like Tyrann Mathieu to really encapsulate and quantify all the things he does for a team. So it's going to be
Yeah.
interesting to see how they replace him. I think they do have some big question marks on their defense for sure. And it wasn't a very good defense for most of last year. Then they turned it on, right? But they
Yeah.
lost a lot of really good players on that side. And they had some good additions. I mean, that was the big thing after Tyreek Hill, adding Marquez Valdez-Scantling. Then you also add, Sky Moore in the draft to the receiving core. You add Juju Smith-Schuster. But I just think it's one of those things that even with those additions. I mean, and George Karlaftis, a guy we like, Trent McDuffie on the
Yeah.
defensive side. Those are good additions in some cases, and rookies we'll see, right? It seems like they're going to have to rely pretty heavily, especially on those defensive rookies right away, which can always be tough. So they added a lot, but it's just do the sum of that, equal everything that Tyreek Hill brought to the table, right? When even just adding all those individual pieces, none of them close to what Hill brought.
No, not at all. I mean, none of those guys are anywhere on the same plane or the same universe or in the same universe as the Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill is a true superstar of the game. He's one of the best players at his position in the NFL. None of these other guys that the Chiefs brought in are at that stature. So I can't say, with any certainty or any confidence that, the moves that they made equal out the loss of Tyreek Hill. Those guys that they
Sure.
got in the draft, those are all lottery picks. I mean, they pick them, you want to see them do well. Obviously, you have an expectation for that, but you have no idea what they are going to do when they step out on an NFL field against NFL competition. They're going to have to prove what they can do. So the proven commodity that Tyreek Hill was versus the potential of what these players are or could be, they just they don't add up at this point.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, it's hard to replace that, and you just almost never win a trade when you're the team getting rid of the superstar player.
Yeah.
And it was just him and Patrick Mahomes. But let's not get it twisted, right? I mean, this is a division that runs through Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs because of their dominance, 6 straight
Yeah.
years inside the division. You have to go
No
take
doubt.
it away from them. So I do think, I mean, on paper, the Chargers got a lot better on defense. They got better, I would say, on offense. It's hard to argue that the Chiefs really did that on either side of the ball, got better, right? At the same time, I mean, Andy Reid was doing it with, Byron Pringle, right, and Demarcus Robinson and like a bunch
Yeah.
of just dudes. Like he has more than just dudes on his team. I still think though, David, on paper, the Chargers have closed the gap. I think the Chargers on paper are the best team. And I think they're better than the Chiefs. I mean, there's different arguments for the Raiders and the Broncos who are both very much improved. I
Yeah.
think the Chargers on paper are better than the Chiefs, but the Chargers still have to go take it.
100%. And I would agree with you on that as well. And you look at the defense for the Chargers versus the defense for the Chiefs, I think you see unequivocally that the talent is very, very different. There's a big disparity between what the Chargers currently have now with JC Jackson and Joey Bosa and, all of the amazing weapons, now that, they have run stoppers with Sebastian Joseph Day and Austin Johnson and bringing in Kyle Van Noy and, the draft picks that they were able to, throw into the fold as well. And then on the offensive side, there's really only one major hole that you can look at and say, yeah, that's definitely something we need to figure out. And that's the right tackle position. But Past that, I mean, the Chargers are absolutely loaded on the offensive side of the ball. But yes, I mean, this is all on paper. And until the Chargers go out there and actually strap it up and beat the Chiefs like they should, with the potential and the talent that they currently have, if they stay healthy, I think when take the rosters and you match them up right now, I think the Chargers have the superior roster.
I think they do. I mean, especially defensively, they lost a lot of guys. They haven't brought in a ton of guys that I think are going to fix what they're going to do without just having to really heavily rely on
I mean,
really
Justin
young
Reed's a
guys.
solid player. I mean, I'll give him
Sure.
that one, but
But I mean, that's a Tyrann Matthew for Justin Reed swap right there,
yeah,
right? So it's like, are you arguing that's better? No, I wouldn't.
nah.
I'm not going to do that. And I think that the Chargers, they have enough offensively to keep up with Patrick Mahomes. He's still special. Travis
Oh yeah,
Kelsey is still special, and it's not going to be easy. And the games are still probably going to be close when these two teams face off. But that's how you prove you're the best team in the AFC West. First, it starts with beating the Kansas City Chiefs because you have to take it
absolutely.
away from them because they've went deep playoff runs every single season, basically since Patrick Mahomes has been starting, and also won a Super Bowl. So go take it. You have the players to do it. Let's see if the Chargers can pull it off. But that's not the only threat, right? Because I think there's a legitimate chance, that we're going into the later parts of this season with all of these teams being very bunched up in the AFC West because there's a lot of really good players, including the Raiders, who probably got the best player added into the division during this cycle, at least at their position. That's Devontae Adams because he's, potentially the number one receiver in the league. They also added Chandler Jones. What have they done? How much have they improved from last season? We're going to get into that. But if we think, David, the Chargers are the best team in the AFC West, are you ready to put your money where your mouth is? Are you willing to put a bet on it? Because if you do, you got to do it at betonline.net because it's the number one place for all of your betting needs because it is a crazy time to be placing bets right now with everything going on in the playoffs. I mean, the basketball playoffs are nuts. Just watched tonight before we recorded this what happened to the Suns, right? If anyone, some people made some money on the Dallas Mavericks tonight. Some people made some money on the Celtics tonight for sure. And the NHL, I mean, has been even crazier. I mean, the first round, I can't believe it was only the first round. So many game sevens, so many crazy playoff games. And if you want to find the best, funnest place to place bets on any kind of playoff game or any sporting event of any kind, because baseball is going on as well, UFC too, you go to betonline.net because they are going to give you the best and funnest ways to play, including maybe picking the Chargers over the Chiefs in 2022. But make sure you guys head to the website or use your mobile device to learn more about all the trends and the action at BetOnline, where the game starts. David, there's so much. I mean, we probably should have split this up into multiple shows because so much happened in the AFC West, and we can
For real.
continue to pick up on some of this stuff later on. But now we know, right? The draft is over, free agency is over. We know when these two teams play. Chargers have a primetime game against the Chiefs. They don't have a primetime game against the Raiders, but what they do have, David, is one of the games of the season in the entire NFL last year.
Oh
Maybe the
yeah.
best game of the season. Not really for Charger fans, but that crazy Raiders Chargers game. The Chargers, of course, as they did with every team in the division, split the season series last year in 2021, and they lost the most important game of the season to the Raiders.
Yeah.
That's tough, David. I mean, that's pretty brutal. I mean, now this year, it's crazy because they don't have any primetime games against the Raiders. And you'd think, after last year having Monday Night Football, where they took away the Raiders, undefeated record, that was great. And then you lose the final game of the season on really something that encapsulated your whole season, right, David? It's just that big run to put them in field goal range, to have them not take the tie and have both teams make the playoffs. I mean, week one can't come soon enough, David, because that's going to be, I think, one of the biggest games on the slate the first weekend of the NFL, easily.
That game might not be a primetime game officially, but I tell you what, it is absolutely a primetime game. And I know it's a primetime game for a
It's
lot
a
of
big
Charger
time game
fans.
for sure.
I
Yeah.
know there is a large feeling of revenge, of retribution that are filling Chargers fans' hearts when they look at this game against the Raiders after what happened, after all the heroics, after all the insane throws, after all of the things that they did, converting fourth down after fourth down after fourth down and just refusing to quit, and Justin Herbert just going Super Saiyan God mode and just doing everything in his absolute power to win that game, just to see the kryptonite that the Chargers got just completely killed with all season. The run defense failed them yet
Was.
again in the biggest moment, in the biggest game of the year. I know that hurts. And I know it still hurts for the players too. I know that one stung. And then they still talk about that game and they still talk about the effects of that game. So I know
Okay.
they're going to be revved up and fired up immediately week 1 to get that win right back from the
Yeah,
Raiders.
100%. I mean, it's always heated against the Raiders with the Chargers. I mean, I think the Chargers fans hate Raider fans and Raiders more than any other of the fan bases, I would believe, in
They were
my
brought up to do
experience.
that, man. It's
Yeah, I
just
mean, that's
from a
just kind of
child.
how it's been. But they are under first year head coach Josh McDaniels. Can't believe that
Yes.
dude's still getting,
And
the
first time GM as well.
and a first time GM. So we'll see how that all mixes, right? No more Gus Bradley over there. We'll see how the defense goes under Patrick Graham. And I mean, when you're looking at where this roster is at this point, I mean, it starts with the biggest addition of the AFC West as far
Oh
as a
yeah.
player at the top of their positions. That's Devontae Adams. Huge move by them. A big swing to keep up in the AFC West. You also go out and you get Chandler Jones. You trade away Yannick Ngakoue, so now you have the combination of Max Crosby and Chandler Jones. That's a great combination. Now Max Crosby was great last year.
Yeah.
That's scary when you have the Chargers right tackle situation. And then they have, other guys, Kyler Fackrell. They got some rookies, mid-round picks because the Broncos and the Raiders traded most of their early picks. So these guys
Yeah.
were picking later on in the draft. But David, I mean, it's hard to ignore what that combination is going to be at this point. I mean, Derek Carr to Devontae Adams again after playing together at Fresno State. They reunite, and that's going to be a big move for an offense that was already pretty good last year.
Yeah, they were. They were pretty good, but they didn't have any really good wide receivers outside of Hunter Renfrow. Outside of Hunter Renfrow, there really wasn't anybody that, would say, okay, that guy definitely scares me.
It's
Now
just
they
Darren Waller,
absolutely,
right? Because he's
yeah,
basically,
right. I mean,
that's
Darren
the
Waller's
big
a tight
receiving
end,
weapon.
but I mean, yes, he's really just a weapon. I mean,
Now there's that trio, though. Hunter
yeah,
Renfrow and Darren Waller and Devontae Adams.
for sure. And I mean, hey, you have to absolutely give Devontae Adams his credit. He is going out there year after year after year and put up crazy numbers, albeit with Aaron Rodgers, right? A future, first ballot Hall of Fame quarterback. And now he's going to Derek Carr. And, let's make no mistake here, people. Derek Carr is not anywhere close to Aaron Rodgers, not in any sense, any form, or any fashion. So just remember that. I mean, I think, Raider fans need to temper their expectations on what they should expect between Devontae Adams and Derek Carr in the first year of their union. I'm not saying it's going to be a complete catastrophe, but I think it might take some time for them to really gel and really find that chemistry. But also, you just can't discount the obvious difference in arm talent between those two quarterbacks.
Yeah, and I mean, Derek Carr had, good games with the guys he had, that didn't have a guy like Devontae
Sure.
Adams in it, right? And they still were super explosive at times. Josh Jacobs, I mean, has always been a kind of an enigma to me. I don't really ever get it, but he was also the one that pretty
Well,
much
neither
ended the
did the
Chargers
Raiders
season
because they declined his 5th-year option.
on all of them. Yeah, Jonathan Abram. That's where I would be looking. But key losses: Casey Hayward, Zay Jones, Brian Edwards, Yannick Ngakoue. Those, I mean, not huge losses, but like Casey Hayward was like their best corner for most of last year, which
Oh,
is
yeah,
crazy to say. Zay
clearly.
Jones had moments where he was they're probably their best receiver in certain games, So it's going to be interesting to see how it all meshes with them under a first time head coach for them and Josh McDaniels. Obviously, he had time before with the Broncos. We saw how that one turned out. But
Disaster.
I think, David, for me, though, the Raiders defense is where I still have the most question marks, especially in the secondary. They bring in Rocky Sin from the Colts in that trade. They get, Bilal Nichols, who's a nice piece inside for sure. But you still have to look at where the gaps potentially are, especially in that secondary. And I see a few of them, without banking on just players becoming a lot better than they were as far as last season in a totally new defense, right? Because we saw how much the Chargers struggled at times
Yeah.
trying to get into their new defense, right? With the players that they had. Chargers have way more talent on their defense to me than the Raiders do. So I
Oh,
think
yeah.
in that gap with Justin Herbert having the gap that he does over Derek Carr, to me, the Chargers are better than the Raiders. They were better last year. They just didn't win that last game.
Yeah, I agree with you. I definitely think they're better than the Raiders, just overall talent-wise on both sides of the ball again. I mean, I don't want to sound like a broken record here, but I like what the Raiders did when they paired, Chandler Jones and Max Crosby. I mean, that's
That's
going to be
dirty,
a
sure.
lethal unit for sure, but if you don't have the guys on the back end to cover, you can't really maximize on the potential and the the advantage that having a good pass rush provides you. They're not going to really be able to create those turnovers that you're looking for. And I think that that's right there where there's the biggest disparity or biggest difference between the Raiders in the Chargers is on the defensive side. They're much more talented on the defensive side now with the additions and the depth that they have provided to this team. So I think the Chargers were better last year, and I think this year they're going to prove why they are the better team.
Well, and that's the thing about games inside of your own division, right? The only way to have that definitive thing of saying, we're better than that team is to beat them both times. Because if
Both
not, it's
times.
1-1. And that's been the problem, with the Chargers too many times splitting games. Like you lost the game last year to the Broncos with half Teddy Bridgewater, half Drew Lock. You know what I mean? It's
Ugh.
like games like that. Now there is no easy games inside the division. You have to go out and win both of them. And you had to finish, obviously, with a better record. And I think the Chargers didn't show last year they were a better team than the Raiders when it counted the most. They have a
Right.
chance to get that back this year. And I think Devontae Adams, is a huge addition for their
Oh, yeah.
offense. That's going to be big, but I think the Chargers just improved so dramatically defensively. I just think they're such a more well-rounded team than the team that the Raiders faced last season. But the biggest, I think, upgrade at a position, though, that's as far as importance, was obviously Russell Wilson heading to the AFC West, heading to the Broncos, another team with a first-year head coach and a first-time Broncos head coach, Nathaniel Hackett. Is that enough? They were always a quarterback away, but now that they have the quarterback, are they the team to be in the AFC West? Did they close the gap with the Chargers after a 7-10 season? We'll get into that coming up right after this. But I think the Chargers, the best thing about their offseason was that first day of free agency after already bringing in Khalil Mack. It felt like our birthdays because it was J.C. Jackson, Sebastian Joseph Day, Austin Johnson, filling giant needs right off the back and getting one of the biggest players in free agency. And I think that's why we're feeling bullish on the Chargers. But every day feels like your birthday with Built Bars because right now they have a birthday cake Built Bar that's out right now. I've always been a sucker for birthday cake flavored things. So now when you're talking about a birthday cake flavored protein bar that's packed with 16 grams of protein, you can definitely say that I'm in on that action, right? You can also go peanut butter brownie and cookies and cream and other great flavors. But this one, guys, the birthday cake puff, unlike any of the other Built Bars I've had. I like the puffs already. Cinnamon churro, banana cream pie, but like birthday cake puff, 100% covered in white chocolate, and they have 150 calories. Tell me something else birthday cake flavor you're getting with that kind of, something that's going to fit on your diet. 16 grams of protein, only 150 calories. If you guys haven't tried the puffs, let me tell you guys, it's changing up the protein bar game, and the birthday cake is my new favorite Built Bar. I've had a lot, cookies and cream, peanut butter brownie, cinnamon churro, but birthday cake's now my favorite. It feels like your birthday every time you eat one. How can you go wrong with that? Who doesn't love their birthday? Even though as I'm getting older, the birthday becomes a little less fun, but birthday cake is still great. When you can feel like you're eating a birthday cake and having something that can still fit on your diet, you're doing something right. And do something right, go to built.com, get the birthday cake bars while they're still there, and save some money since you listen to this podcast. You can use the promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off your order. Save money on those birthday cake Built Bars at built.com. Promo code LOCKED15 to save money today. All right, David, we talked about the other two teams, right? I think, of course, we're going in. I think this is the first season, where we felt like the Chargers could easily be, not easily, but you can make a good argument for them being the best team in the division, right? Because
Yeah.
Justin Herbert, obviously, I think Patrick Mahomes is still better than Herbert at this point, just with what he's accomplished. And the way he's
The
played, he's
resume.
done
Yeah.
ridiculous things. They have different skill sets, right? And they have some of the same
Right.
ones, but
Yeah.
the gap between them is a lot closer than most quarterbacks, obviously, right? So then
I
it
would
comes
agree.
down to what the roster is around them, because that's when it starts making a difference, especially when you have a superstar. But the Broncos added a superstar quarterback, and that's, nothing
Sure
that,
did.
and that's to a team that already had a good defense, of losing their, defensive-minded head coach in Vic Fangio. But even last year, David, the Chargers lost to the Broncos in one of those games, right? They still split the series last year. Then they had the COVID-ridden second game later on in the season where the Chargers, kept their season alive and smashed them 34-13, but also lost the first game 28-13 in an embarrassing fashion, I would say, for the Chargers. They never go away, right? And now they just kind of threw themselves back into contention, David, where it's hard to even look at those games from last year because it's like, oh yeah, Russell Wilson's now in the AFC West.
Yeah, honestly, I think that's what you do. You take everything that you saw last year and you throw it out the window. You don't even look at it now because Russell Wilson makes that big of a difference.
Different
He is a
coach, different
franchise
quarterback.
quarterback. Yeah, different coach, different offensive system, different defensive system. There's going to be a lot of changeover with this organization, and that's why I think that I don't know how well they're going to do right away. I just think that it takes time for a whole new system on both sides of the ball to really be taught to the players and then have them go out there and execute it in the way that it's supposed to be ran. I think we saw that with the Chargers last year with, a new offense, which, hey, the offense did really well, right? They were top 5 in most categories, but
Sure.
on the defensive side, they were one of the worst defenses in the NFL. So I think it just takes time for those systems to really, ingrain themselves in these players' heads and them to be able to go out there and execute that, the way they should. So I think it's going to take some time for them to be the team that they can possibly be. The potential is there, but I just don't see them being really good right away.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that. I could see why it would take time for sure. And there's a lot of turnover in the entire division. I think you could say that about all the teams in the AFC West, including the
Yeah.
Chargers, because it's like
Yeah.
they have an entirely new defensive personnel with some mainstays, like Bosa and Derwin James, but like a lot of new players who are expected to start and get significant playing time now is
True.
all going to have to gel. But with the Broncos, I mean, it's nice because they already had a pretty good offensive line, right? They have a pretty good running game.
Yeah.
Javonte Williams in, bringing back Melvin Gordon. That was already a strength of theirs last year, even on a terrible offense, right?
Yep.
But you got an upgrade at the most important position. I think defensively, you wonder, right, what that defense is going to be like now that it's not Vic Fangio, right?
Yeah.
Or
What does that
Vance
look like
Joseph.
now? Right.
It's
Yeah.
always felt like they will just always have a good defense, right? And I mean, they
Yeah.
also added Randy Gregory, DJ Jones. They already had Bradley Chubb, who I think is coming off of a down season by his standards. I think the Chargers got much better defensively than the Broncos did, but I like those picks. I mean, Randy Gregory is a guy that a very good pass rusher. DJ Jones was a guy I liked as far as the Chargers trying to add a run stuffer when he was an option. But I think the other big part of this too, David, is them hoping that he can really bring to life that receiving core that they've had locked up for the next few seasons. Can he get Cortland Sutton back to where he was when his trajectory was way higher than it is coming off a down season? Jerry
Yeah.
Jeudy had 0 touchdowns last year.
Right.
Tim Patrick, a solid receiver, but can he
KJ
take all of
Hamler.
those?
Right. Yeah.
Sure. I mean, a lot of it's going to be like him taking those dudes to the next level. A lot of dudes who, individually haven't put up great singular seasons.
Well, and those guys, I mean, were honestly not really that quiet about saying that they wish they had a better quarterback to throw them the football.
Yeah.
So now that they have a legitimate superstar at the quarterback position, there's no more excuses. Now it's go out there and put up the numbers and go prove to everyone why you were top receivers in the game. I mean, they have a lot of talent on the offensive side of the ball. They just have never been able to put it together. And then, hey, that could be because they didn't have the quarterback to put it all together. But I think I'm not really as worried about the offensive side of the ball. Like I said, I am worried about them, really learning the system and going executing it. But on defense, that's the biggest thing for me is it going to be the same system? It's probably not, probably going to be a different system. And so how are they going to be able to learn that and execute that? And is it going to be the same type of dominant defense that we've seen?
Do the players still
years?
fit the new defense?
Yes,
Like
exactly.
Sure.
I mean, are they going to be
Fair
able to go
question.
out there and execute it like they did for many, many years? I think that is where I have the most question marks.
Well, and that's the nice thing for Brandon Staley, right? He's like he has had now 2 seasons to kind of get the players he needs defensively and guys that he feels like will fit his system, right? They only really had this one off season. You're working with a lot of the guys they still have, which includes Justin Simmons and Pat Surtain the second. Like those are really, really good players to fall back on. You lost Shelby Harris. I mean, I count Von Miller as a loss still because it's like, hey, Von Miller isn't part of that defense, and that was one of the mainstays of that great Broncos defense. When you thought about, okay, they're going to have a good defense, a big part of that was always having Von Miller, and he left last season in the middle of the season. He's not walking through those doors. You're going to need Bradley Chubb and Randy Gregory to really hit it off and both play well for you. You're going to need DJ Jones to fit in well. And maybe, obviously they think he will, bringing him in and paying them what he did, paying him what they did during this offseason. So I think there's a lot of questions still for me in that defense for sure. And I mean, how it's all going to fit together. But I think the other part of the offensive side of things here, David, is like Russell Wilson just had DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, right? So both of those guys would probably be the number one on the Broncos. I don't think that's saying anything crazy, right? And now their best guy isn't going to be as good as his top two options. And they had a bad line, and the running game was hit and miss, and they had Pete Carroll, in that offense, whatever. But I think for the Chargers, I think that the Chargers offense will still be better. I think the Chargers offense still has better weapons, right? I
Yeah.
think, Mike Williams, Austin Eckler is better than what they're putting together, even if they might have a better running game as far as pure runners with Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams. I would give them the edge on that.
Well,
But
and
they
we'll
also
see if
didn't.
Spiller changes that too. I mean, if Spiller comes in and wreck shop and runs like he ran in college, I mean, I think that could be a really good 1-2 punch for the Chargers too. So, I mean,
Sure.
I think that's to be determined.
I'm saying, this is based on what we know, right? I mean,
Oh,
if
sure.
we're,
Yeah.
if we're
What we
going to
know
not.
is, they have a better established running game without a doubt.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if we're talking about, draft picks being lottery picks and stuff like that, we
Sure.
obviously still have to see it, right? These dudes did
Of
it last
course.
season. And I think Javonte Williams, best rookie running back probably
Oh, yeah. He
last
was
season.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think the thing is, though, is just the Chargers have better weapons in most part. The offensive line would probably be pretty close because the Chargers just have that one big hole, that it's hard to quantify right now. But I think
Yeah.
with what the Chargers have done defensively, I think that's just, to me, what makes them better than the Broncos on paper at this point. It's always going to be tough. Going to Mile High is always going to suck. And then you get, the last game of the season against the Broncos.
Yeah.
They're going to get 5 games before you to gel, like you talked about, because the first one is week 6 on Monday Night Football,
Yep.
primetime game. It's always going to be tough, David, right? And these teams, there's no slouches now. Like, you don't get to play in the AFC South, right? And we'll talk about that. The Chargers getting to go up against the Jaguars, right? Getting to go up against the Texans for a revenge
Right.
game.
Right.
But in this division, like, every game is going to be super tough. But to me, though, I think there's just a lot of things we haven't seen yet, right? Nathaniel Hackett's offense, what Russell Wilson's going to look like. I think that's huge. That puts them right there into the conversation for competing in the AFC West, which is huge because they weren't really close to that last year. No one was taking them seriously. Now you're getting taken seriously. If I had to, pick one of these two rosters right now to ride with, I'd pick the Chargers.
Well, yeah, I mean, the Chargers are going into year 2 of their systems now. Justin Herbert's going into year 2 of a system for the first time in his career. I mean, including college. So, I mean, I think it's just going to be, obviously, that system last year defensively didn't do great, but now you have a lot more players that fit what that system is trying to do.
It's a lot of projection, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of projection, right? But I think the talent that they brought in is undeniable. I mean, J.C.
course.
Jackson, one of the best corners in the league, Khalil Mack, a former defensive player of the year, Austin Johnson and Sebastian Joseph Day, phenomenal against the run. So, I mean, all of the pieces and the depth, I think, has been upgraded so exponentially for the Chargers that when you look at the roster now, it's not just top-end talent. It's top-end talent and depth now. At least that's what it appears to be as we see it right now. And I think that's why we can sit here and say that the Chargers are definitely the team to beat in the AFC West. Now, they have to go out there and do it. They have to go out there and unseat the Chiefs. And until they do, then, it's just potential that hasn't been realized yet.
Yeah, it's all just on paper at this point. I mean, because the thing is as any Charger fan could know, going back through, recent history, probably even not even just recent history, but like the better team on paper in a divisional game, it only means so much. Because, even the Raiders were beating the Chiefs a couple times this season when they weren't even making the playoffs, over the last few years with Derek Carr and that team, right? But it doesn't matter who the better team is. You got to go out there and win. For the Chargers, you need to go at least 4-2 in this division. For me to really think of that as a win inside the AFC West. I mean, and they're only a couple of seasons away from going 0-6 in the division a couple of years ago, right? Now we're not that far away from that. This year, it's going to take at least 4-2 for me, I think, for the Chargers to do what they need to do and to have a chance to win the division, right?
Yeah.
4-2, I think, is the floor to win the AFC West. And you have to beat the Chiefs at least once, I think. That's how you do it. And you might have to play the Chiefs 3 times this year. We'll see, because that schedule isn't out yet, the playoff schedule. And the Chargers have to make the playoffs, because anything less than that is a colossal failure. So on paper, they have everything they need to compete in the best division in football, right? The Chargers can be one of the best teams in football. That's what we're saying here today. They have to go out there and do it. And Justin Herbert has to keep on improving from, borderline MVP, ish numbers that he had in 2021. So it all has to play out, and the guys you have that play well need to continue to play well. The guys that you brought in need to fit well. And the guys that you need to step up and take a step are going to have to do that for all this to happen, which is a lot of things. This division is very much up for grabs, but right now I'm putting my money on the Chargers. That is going to wrap things up for today's show, though. It's going to be so crazy. I'm so excited to see how this plays out. The Chargers have a crazy schedule, the 10th toughest schedule in the NFL. So we're going to continue breaking down the different parts of that, including them getting the Rams in the NFC West, them getting the Titans and the Colts, two teams that are going to out physical them or try to in the AFC South. A lot more with this schedule we can get into. We might do Twitter Tuesday tomorrow as well. So if you guys want to get in on that action, hit us up on Twitter at lockedonlac and give us a follow there. You can also follow me on Twitter at Dan Talk Sports and David Droegemeier on Twitter at DroTalkSD. You can also find the show on YouTube, where you should be subscribing to that and make sure you guys never miss the show. And you can also, if you're listening on the podcast, follow the show on all platforms wherever you get your podcasts from for free all the time, and rate the show and review if you like it as well. We really appreciate those always. If you guys want to get your voicemails on the show, we'll probably get back to Fan Mail Friday this week, calling 2323-524-7924 and tell us if you think the Chargers are now the best team in the AFC West. We have much more to get into this week, but get your guys' questions in on Twitter Tuesday. We will be back with you guys tomorrow. As always, until then, take it easy and go Bolts.